We grow up hearing the same story, that all people are equal, that every voice matters the same, that no one is inherently above or below. It's a comforting idea, a moral ideal, and a dangerous illusion, because in nature, nothing is equal. Some are stronger, some are smarter, some are born with will, drive, and vision, others are not. Yet society repeats the mantra, everyone is the same. And anyone who challenges that is labeled cruel, elitist, even evil. But Nietzsche saw through the lie. To him, this wasn't morality, it was resentment in disguise. A tool used by the weak to pull down the strong. A strategy to flatten greatness under the weight of mediocrity. That it begins innocently, with calls for fairness, with compassion for the underdog. But over time, it becomes a slow erosion of excellence, of merit, of the will to rise above. We stop honoring achievement. We start resenting it. The idea of equality becomes more than a political slogan. It becomes a moral weapon, used not to lift the weak, but to cripple the strong. We hear things like, check your privilege, tone it down, don't outshine others, as if ambition is a threat, as if difference is injustice, as if greatness must apologize for existing. Nietzsche didn't believe all people were equal, and he wasn't ashamed to say it. Not because he hated humanity, but because he wanted it to grow, and that growth starts by facing an uncomfortable truth. Equality is not natural. It's not real. It's not even desirable. It's a myth we've been sold to keep the masses docile and the exceptional silent. Nietzsche didn't fear chaos. He feared conformity, not the kind enforced by dictators, but the quiet, smiling kind, imposed by the majority, what he called the herd. The herd doesn't think, it reacts. It obeys. It doesn't seek truth, it seeks safety. And it worships the idea of equality, not because it is true, but because it is comforting. In the herd, difference is danger, excellence is arrogance, strength is suspicious. Anyone who dares to rise above the average becomes a threat to the illusion of sameness. So the herd does what it always does, it crushes what it fears. Not with violence, necessarily, but with shame, with labels, with collective scorn. Nietzsche saw modern morality not as progress but as revenge. He called it slave morality, a worldview born not from strength, but from weakness. The weak, unable to rise, redefine strength as evil. They call humility a virtue, not because it's noble, but because it protects them from feeling inferior. They praise kindness not because it's pure, but because it makes power feel guilty. In this system, the strong must hide, the noble must apologize, and the herd becomes God. It doesn't matter if what you say is right. It only matters if it makes people uncomfortable. And if it does, you're labeled toxic, problematic, dangerous. But Nietzsche believed this is the path to spiritual decay. Because a culture that fears the exceptional kills the future. The herd survives by suppressing greatness. But greatness is what moves the world forward. So he asked a dangerous question. What happens when we stop aspiring to be better and start demanding that no one be different? And he gave a brutal answer. We fall, not because we were weak, but because we refuse to let anyone be strong. We want to believe everyone has the same potential, that given the same education, the same resources, the same love, anyone can become anything. But is that true? Or is it a comforting lie that keeps society from confronting the truth? Nietzsche didn't think all people were created equal, because nature never intended it that way. Some are born with more strength, clarity, vision. Some are born to lead, while others are content to follow. Some possess the will to climb. Others deep down don't even want to. This doesn't mean cruelty. It doesn't justify oppression. It simply means difference is real. And trying to erase it does more harm than good. When we pretend everyone is equal, we create a false moral economy. where effort means more than outcome, where feelings outrank facts, where failure is protected, and excellence is punished. We hand out participation trophies, not because they matter, but because they numb the sting of reality, and yet, the sting is the point. Struggle is what shapes character. Discomfort is what reveals who we are. Inequality forces growth, because it demands that we rise, but in the modern world, we're told no one should rise. That differences are oppressive. That if someone excels, it's because of privilege, luck, or systemic bias. It's easier to say the game is rigged than admit that some people are simply better at the game. Not morally better, not more worthy, but stronger in will, sharper in mind, deeper in courage. Nietzsche believed this distinction matters because pretending it doesn't creates a society where the average is the ceiling. Where no one is allowed to shine too brightly, where ambition is rebranded as ego, where greatness is diluted in the name of fairness. And the cost? A world where no one dares to be exceptional, because the moment you stand out, the herd moves to cut you down. We don't rise by flattening the landscape. We rise by climbing, knowing that not everyone will reach the summit. And that's okay. In fact, it's necessary, because the summit exists for those who are willing to endure the climb. And without that mountain, there is nothing worth striving for. Equality sounds moral, fair, compassionate, but what if it's something else? What if beneath the kindness, it's a form of control? Nietzsche believed that moral equality, idea that all humans are equal in worth, was not born from love, but from resentment. The weak, unable to match the strong, redefine the rules. They create a moral framework that punishes power and sanctifies powerlessness. It's not about fairness, it's about leveling the field by force, not rising to meet the strong, but dragging the strong down to meet the weak. It's morality as revenge. He called this resentment, a deep, festering bitterness that disguises itself as virtue. You see it today in how society handles power. Those who succeed must apologize. Those who suffer are celebrated. Strength must justify itself. Weakness needs no explanation. But this isn't justice, it's inversion. It rewards helplessness. It moralizes victimhood. It turns every difference into a crime and every success into an accusation. This moral equality doesn't elevate the human spirit. It neuters it. It teaches people to outsource blame, to shun responsibility, to seek validation instead of transformation. And over time, it becomes not just a belief, but a weapon, a way to silence dissent, a way to control speech, a way to enforce sameness through guilt. Nietzsche feared that modern morality would no longer be about becoming more, but about ensuring no one becomes too much. This is how societies collapse from within, when compassion is used as a leash, when fairness becomes enforced obedience, when the moral code is written by those who fear freedom because it means taking ownership of your destiny. True morality, to Nietzsche, wasn't about comfort. It was about courage. It wasn't about protecting the fragile. It was about forging the strong. So we must ask, are we practicing compassion? Or are we being manipulated into believing that the highest virtue is saneness? And if so, who benefits from that illusion? In every era, true greatness has been rare. And in every era, it has also been feared, not because the great are evil, but because their very existence reveals the mediocrity of the many. A brilliant thinker makes average minds feel dull. A bold leader exposes the passivity of the crowd. A master of their craft forces us to confront our own unrealized potential. Nietzsche didn't just admire greatness, he saw it as the only antidote to cultural decay. But here's the paradox. The more a society talks about inclusion and equality, the more hostile it becomes to excellence. Why? Because greatness offends the herd. It breaks the illusion that we are all the same. It threatens the comfort of conformity. It forces a truth most cannot bear. Some people rise, Most do not. Instead of aspiring to rise, the herd attacks with it. Cannot match, it mocks greatness. It deconstructs it. It demands it apologize for existing. And slowly, we begin to internalize this message. Don't try too hard. Don't stand out. Be humble or else. But humility, in this context, isn't a virtue. It's a muzzle. Nietzsche believed the greatest threat to the human spirit wasn't violence or war. It was the quiet death of ambition. A world where the exceptional are tamed. Where genius is medicated. Where strength is diluted in the name of fairness. And the result? A culture that worships mediocrity. That confuses noise for truth. And that buries greatness beneath 1,000 empty slogans. That we fear excellence because it shatters our illusions. But without it, there is no art, no vision, no future. Nietzsche didn't want a world where a few rule the many. He wanted a world where each individual becomes the highest version of themselves. But that requires something dangerous. Not equality, but hierarchy based on will, effort, character, not imposed from above, but earned from within. And in a society that fears hierarchy, even becoming your best self is an act of rebellion. There was a time when gods ruled morality. Then reason replaced them. And now something else has taken their place. Equality, not as a political idea, but as a moral absolute. A sacred value. A new secular religion. Nietzsche predicted this would happen. When God died, something would have to fill the void. Something to provide meaning. Something to replace objective truth. Something to tell us how to live. So modern man didn't stop worshiping. He just changed altars. Now, instead of salvation. Through faith, we are promised salvation through sameness. Salvation through inclusion, through equity, through universal validation. We're told no one should feel left behind. No one should fail. No one should be better, faster, stronger, more. But this isn't compassion. It's comfort weaponized into dogma. The language of equality becomes sacred. Challenge it, and you're labeled a heretic, a bigot, a supremacist, a threat to society. Debate becomes taboo. Dissent becomes sin. Nietzsche warned that when a moral system becomes unquestionable, it stops evolving. And when it stops evolving, it starts decaying. Today, the religion of equality governs our schools, media, politics, even relationships. It tells us we are all the same, and that any difference in outcome must be oppression. It demands equity of result, not equality of opportunity. It punishes success. It redefines truth as harmful if it offends anyone's self-image, and perhaps most dangerously, it tells people they're perfect exactly as they are, that there is no need to rise, struggle, or overcome. This is the death of aspiration. Nietzsche believed human greatness requires challenge. That strength is built by struggle. That inequality is not an injustice, but a reality to rise through. But the modern religion of equality does not want people to rise. It wants them to remain safe, predictable, equal. It offers a comfortable cage lined with soft words and empty affirmations. And many accept it, because freedom is terrifying. Because being unequal means being responsible for your fate. But Nietzsche's brutal truth was this: you cannot be free and equal. Not in spirit, not in will, not in destiny. You must choose. And most one single quotes we are not equal. We never were. And deep down we know it, but that truth terrifies us. Because it means our lives are not guaranteed. That success isn't promised. That meaning must be earned. And that we can fail. So we reach for equality. Not as a path to justice, but as a shield from reality. Nietzsche believed that the human spirit thrives not when it is comforted, but when it is tested, when it is forced to confront its limits, to rise beyond them, and to become something greater. Not through conformity, not through fairness, but through the dangerous, beautiful act of self-overcoming. The individual who dares to break away from the herd, Who stops chasing sameness and starts chasing truth? That is the one who is truly alive. This is the path of the Bermensch. Nietzsche's ideal human, not a tyrant, not a ruler, but someone who creates their own values, who does not apologize for their strength, who does not resent the strong, and who does not lie to themselves just to belong. Equality may feel good, but truth is better. Even when it hurts. Because only when we accept our inequality, our differences in will, courage, and vision, can we begin to grow. And only when we stop asking, how can we all be the same? And start asking, who am I capable of becoming? Do we finally begin the journey we were born for, not toward comfort, but toward greatness.